Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour podcast. I am Kyle Anthony, your host, where today we are talking UFC Vegas 102, headlined by Gregor Rodriguez and Jared Cannonier. We're going to talk four plays like we always do on the show. And if you want to become a client, link down in the description. I already have 3 plays up for clients this weekend. And also, I always appreciate anyone who's liking, commenting on these videos. Appreciate it with the algorithm and kind of give these videos a boost a little bit. So with that being said, last weekend, we go 3-1. We go 3-1. Sounds like a fantastic night overall, but we miss on our big play, which was Tatiana Suarez. And instead of looking at about 9 units of profit, we ended up losing about 1 small, tiny loss. No big deal, especially from the week prior. We picked up 7 units. We are still in profit for this year, but just Tatiana couldn't get the takedowns. She just couldn't get the takedowns. I was pretty shocked. Credit to Weili, man. She is just the GOAT, and she got the job done. But we're back at it this weekend, back at it this Saturday, and a ton of events coming up. So over the next couple of months, so we got to lock in, and let's dive into the main event of the evening between Gregory Rodriguez and Jared Cannonier. Now, in this fight here, you've got Rodriguez minus 220 on the comeback. You've got Jared Cannonier plus 180. Now, Cannonier is a guy that's been around, UFC vet. This will be his 19th UFC fight, which is pretty incredible overall. He has fought at all different weight classes. I think it was 3 different weight classes that he has fought in. And he has, faced some high-level guys throughout his career, fought for the title at one point against Adesanya, did lose. And, he's a powerhouse of a guy. He's got knockout power. He can go in there and swing for the fences. And he's just a big, strong dude. Now, the one thing about it is it looks like time is catching up with him at this particular point in his career. He's 40 years old, gonna be 41 in March. So that's obviously going to be a big concern if you're looking at taking the dog here. And also the fact that I just feel like he's on the decline. This just feels like he's on the decline, especially over the last 2 fights. I was just not impressed what I was seeing. I think he looks a lot slower, not as explosive, and just doesn't appear to be the same guy at this point here. Now, over the last 5 fights, he has absorbed a ton of damage over the last 5 fights, and especially being at the tail end of his career, it's not the greatest look when you're kind of looking at a guy that has absorbed over the last 5 fights, has absorbed 656 significant strikes. Now, that is a lot of damage for this guy overall. And just for context, you got to look at Rodriguez. He absorbed 134 significant strikes over the last 5 fights. Now, obviously, if some of these end early, or he's, knocking out a guy, or he's getting knocked out, obviously that can change certain things. But just standing there taking, 656 significant strikes is going to wear on you, is going to start to, already your durability and your chin and all those things are already a concern. When you're entering your 40s in this game of ours, this fight game of ours, there's a point that's going to start to go down. And not only the fact that, you're seeing maybe the durability and those kinds of things go, but one of the big things that I think that you see is when he's getting hit now, he's kind of not absorbing the shots as well, meaning instead of him getting hit and he wants to stand in the fire, he wants to swing, he wants to throw big shots, you're seeing him kind of back up a little bit. You're seeing him kind of, walk back to the fence a little bit. You're seeing him kind of not wanting to get hit as much as he really used to be. And also the fact of really that aggressive style, of Cannonier is kind of gone. I feel like it's just not really there anymore for him. And I think that's going to be a major concern for him in this particular spot. We're talking about age getting up there now. You're talking about not having that, that dog in him anymore, the aggressive style that he has had, not wanting to absorb shots as much, taking a ton of damage. These things are already big things against him overall. And you also got to add in the fact that, the quick turnaround, I think somewhat a quick turnaround from the Kyle Borralho fight. He took a ton of damage in that fight as well, too, and kind of turning it around fairly quick overall. And especially prior to that, the fight before, another fight where he took some damage there. It's just a lot of damage for a guy at this particular spot. Now you look at, Gregory Rodriguez, where I think he has just multiple paths to victory, multiple advantages in this spot here. And the first part here is 8 years younger, and I think that you're going to see Rodriguez continue to get better. He's a guy that really is a well-rounded fighter overall. I think he's going to have the faster hands backed by big power. He does have that. He sometimes falls in love with his hands too much, but he does have the faster hands, and I think he does have the big power. And one of the other big things, too, that I like that Cannonier does, that Rodriguez does, that Cannonier is a guy that, loves to hammer out the legs. He's a guy that's going to spam some of those low kicks. He's going to look to chop away there, throw big shots. And this is something I think that, Rodriguez is fairly good at checking leg kicks. I think that's going to open up some opportunities here, for him to, kind of slow down one of the paths here that Cannonier may look to do when he's on the feet. And also the fact that, again, he's going to be more well-rounded. But I like the fact that he can work in these takedowns. And I think that that's something that you're going to see Rodriguez do. He's going to look for those level changes. He's going to look to mix it up a little bit. I think he's going to look to kind of smother some of the things that Cannonier may look to do in space, throw big shots, mix it up a little bit. Once it gets on the ground, I think that, you're going to see high-level jiu-jitsu coming from Gregory Rodriguez. I think he's going to have a lot of success on the ground. And just with multiple paths to victory, multiple things in his favor, and a lot of things declining on the Cannonier side, I got to go Gregory Rodriguez, but I'm going to be going Gregory Rodriguez inside the distance here, and that's sitting around minus 130. I like that price. I think it's a nice price overall, a likely path, and I think this is kind of probably the end of Jared Cannonier. So I'm going Gregory Rodriguez inside the distance, minus 130. Now, the next one here we're going to talk about is Edmen Shahbazyan minus 375. On the comeback here, you got Dylan Budka plus 280. Now, at one point, Edmen Shahbazyan, as we all know, was a hype train, a guy coming into the UFC, somebody who was building some hype, as he was kind of making his way in. 11-0 at one point, 9 first-round finishes. I mean, the guy really started to look the part. Looked like, hey, this could be the future. This could be somebody that's going to make a path for him up the ranks. And, high-level kickboxing, flashy kicks, does have that knockout power. And all of those things really worked out well for him up until the point he faced Derek Brunson. And this is where, things did not go well for him overall. And pretty much this is where he got exposed. And the blueprint was pretty much laid out to this is how you beat this guy. And, bad takedown defense, but you're mixing bad takedown defense with bad cardio. And that's something that is very difficult to, I think, overcome, especially when you're fighting wrestlers who are just going to, obviously that is really one of the most taxing things on the body. And in a fight is just relentless wrestling or defending takedowns. Just those kinds of scrambles, those kinds of exchanges are very taxing. And that has really hurt him throughout his career. And, since even including that loss against Derek Brunson, he's on a 2-5 run, has not looked good overall, has fought a lot of wrestlers, a lot of pretty, fairly good wrestlers overall, guys that are going to have, some grappling, guys that are going to have some wrestling technique. And that really is the path to kind of smother a lot of the great things that, you've got from Edmen, who is a, round one guy. He can come out there. He's got the power. He's got the upside finish ability. He can go out there and finish, I think, a lot of guys early in the fight. And now Saturday, UFC sets him up again for another wrestler, which I kind of think is kind of interesting because I don't really put Edmen Shahbazyan as a guy that's going to make a run up the ranks, but I do think he could be a guy that you could make some really fun fights with, some great, stylistic matchups where two strikers going at it. I think Edmen, and another striker would really put on a great fight. But they're giving him another wrestler here, and I think that's actually kind of interesting. But also, Budka, Division One wrestler, but he hasn't really put it all together. He's a guy that, still young in his career. He's 7-4 in his professional career overall. And, Budka's a guy that, doesn't really have, I think, the MMA wrestling type of thing. I think he, probably is a fairly good, just if you put him on the mat and he's going to wrestle somebody, I think he can do fairly well. But I don't think really in MMA, he's very one-dimensional. He's a guy that's, I think, that doesn't really have good striking, very basic striking overall, doesn't cut distance very well, can't really disguise takedowns behind some behind some of these strikes or some of these combinations. He's throwing naked takedowns, not really mixing it up. And that's where I really think that this is a spot where this is far worse of a fighter when it comes to wrestling. Although stylistically, it's a bad matchup for Edmen, but overall, in this wrestling situation here, it's not as high level of a wrestler here. And I do think Edmond can find some success. I think he's going to be the better striker. I think he's going to be able to defend some of these takedowns. And that's the thing, though. Early, he can defend some takedowns. Early, he can do that. And I think that's where he can find success, defending takedowns and also throwing in some counters. I think that's where he's going to find the success here. And I just don't think that, Budka, who is very hittable in the pocket, not going to have any kind of striking overall. I think that Edmond's going to land some big shots, hurt him. And that's where I'm going with this play here. I like Edmond Shahbazyan, but I like Edmond to get the knockout in the first or second round. And that's sitting at plus 190. I like it. I think it's a likely path. I don't think this is going to go very far. I actually kind of lean more towards it being in the first round, but I also like the fact that we're going to get plus 190 for the first 2 rounds by knockout, and I think it's a very likely path for him. I like it. So we're going Edmond Shahbazyan, KO 1 or 2, plus 190. Now, the next one here we're going to talk about is Angela Hill, minus 110. On the comeback here, you got Souza, minus 110. So we got to pick him here. Line has moved around now. This is a matchup here. You've got UFC vet versus a UFC newcomer. Now, not long ago, this line was sitting around minus 150. I think some of them even had it higher. But more recently, it's about minus 150. And money has consistently come in on Souza, and a little bit surprised. Here. I get it. And I think it's a little bit of maybe recency bias or overreaction to pretty much the fact that Souza's coming off a knockout win, which is a great win for her. Knockout win, a little bit chinny who she knocked out, but getting a knockout victory. And also the fact that you've got to add in that Hill is 40. Now, it's not the same 40 as at least in my opinion, as Jared Cannonier. I think Cannonier has suffered some damage. He's taken a lot of shots. He's just been at wars, and that's not really, Hill. Hill really hasn't been at wars. I think she's in shape. I think, she, consistently, actually, the funny part about this is that she is a journeyman fighter. She's 17-4 in her career, but I feel like overall she hasn't really declined. Like, we haven't really seen this fall off a cliff of skills, of ability, like that she's just getting washed out by some of these, mid-level fighters. And, she's kind of having a resurgence overall. She's 4-2 out of her last 6, and her only 2 losses over that span was to legitimate fighters. I mean, Mackenzie Dern and Tabitha Ricci, and they're both at least, substantial fighters who are going to be doing something where she's able to, Hill is able to, beat lower level fighters, but, lose to at least, again, fighters with some substance and just not, getting washed out by mid-level fighters. Now, Calvin Souza, her only path here to me is landing the kill shot. I mean, she's got to go out there. She's got to throw the big shot. She's got to come forward. I think that's what she's going to do. It's kind of the way that she fights. She's going to march forward. She's going to, throw big overhands, try to land the big shot. And if she doesn't, I don't really find her having success outpointing Hill over 3 rounds. Hill, I think she's going to use some of her experience. I think in this particular spot, she's going to have the better footwork, cleaner, I think at range, and she can push a pace. And I think that's something also that you got to look at here, that I think that, she can push a pace here, push out some volume, where I think Souza's going to be looking to throw the big shots, looking to throw those big overhands. And I think that's going to allow Hill to land some shots overall. She's faced, far better competition over her career. Again, she's 40 years old. That is absolutely a concern here, because you're at this particular point, skills can completely fall off a cliff, but I just don't feel like I'm seeing that. And we're seeing the money come in on Souza. I think it's providing a line that's fairly well here for Angela Hill. I think that Hill is the better technical striker. I think there's just a lot of good things for her where I really haven't seen any of that from Souza. And I think that Hill can stick and move, keep this fight standing, outland at range, and find success here. I think more than likely it's going to be Hill by points, but at this price here at minus 110, I am comfortable playing it straight on the money. So I'm taking Angela Hill minus 110. Now, the next one here we're going to be talking about is going to be Gabriel Bonfim minus 220 against Chaos Williams plus 180. Now, in this fight here, we've got Gabriel Bonfim, who is a well-rounded fighter with high finishing ability. He's got 16 victories, 12 submissions, 3 knockouts, and 1 decision. You know, he's a high-level grappler. He's got solid boxing overall, good hand speed, very technical, really all around very technical. If he gets you on the ground, very good positionally, will hunt for those finishes. And he's found a lot of success there, and that's nice. But it's also not a good look when you get melted by Nicholas Dalby. Now, this was the, hey, did he get fraud checked? Is he ever going to be anything, losing to the way that he lost kind of thing? And, early in that fight, he found a lot of success. He was landing some nice shots. He was trying to go for the kill early. And a guy that's so used to, throughout his career, finishing everybody, and then now seeing resistance, that's what happens. When you've been fighting lower level guys or the regional scene and you're good, you start to, you walk into the UFC, you're fighting the best in the world, and you can't run through everybody. And I think the resistance was a little much for him. Once in the second round, he got absolutely gassed and got knocked out. Now, after that, he fought Angelosa for 3 rounds. Now, as much as it's good to see, Gabriel go 3 rounds, it also was a little concerning that he couldn't really go out there and put him away and put Losa away a little bit. So I think that's a little bit concerning because, I'm still not very high on Bonfim. I'm just overall not that high in him. I think there's a lot of issues that he does have. I think that, again, he's very talented, very dangerous, has a lot of ability, but there are holes in his game. And I think that the fact that you can look great, beating these lower level guys, but when you kind of take a little bit of a step up, and now again he took a little bit of a step up. He fought Nicholas Dalby, lost there. He fought Angelusa, went 3 rounds, and that's the interesting part about this is again we're about to have him face another tough fighter, a guy that's been around in Cass Williams, and Cass Williams is very explosive. He's a hard hitter. He's proven to be durable, and he's been battle tested. He's been out there. He's swung with some really good fighters. He's had some nice victories or some close fights overall. And, I do believe that him blitzing forward is going to cause a little bit of problems there for Bonfim if he keeps him on the back foot, if he's not able to look for level changes, and he's not being as aggressive because, the other part here is the fact that I do think that Cass Williams is going to have that physicality advantage. I think he's going to have some strength advantage, and that's going to be interesting kind of seeing how this all plays out with defending takedowns, with those kinds of things as well. You also got to add in that, Williams is going to have a 5-inch reach advantage. So there are dynamics to this fight that do make, that do make me think that this fight is going to be closer than this line indicates. And again, I think there could be some struggle when it comes to boxing range. I think that, Bonfim, the cleaner boxer, but again, there could be some concern when you're talking about, a 5-inch reach advantage, as well as the fact that, the power advantage does go to Williams as well. And I think there's also some concern when you're talking about, I think that there's going to be competitive scrambles, or at least competitive when it comes to takedowns. I don't think that Bonfim's going to wash him when it comes to, his wrestling. And Bonfim may have this high level grappling, but the wrestling is a little iffy. And that's really where this could start to get interesting. And I think that also Bonfim may also look to, be a little bit more patient, not look to knowing now that he can't put everybody away right away. It's back-to-back fights where he didn't do that. He lost 1, went to 3 rounds. And I think he's learning a little bit about that as he's moving up the ranks, that he's got to be more patient. He's got to allow the finishes to come to him when they're available and not just hunt and hunt and hunt. And then, all of a sudden you're gassed out. I think there's a concern when it comes to that here. So in this spot here, I actually do like Bonfim to get the victory. Again, going to be very close, but get the victory. But I think it is going to be by points. I know that he's coming off his first decision victory in his last fight against Angelosa, but I think it's going to be kind of the same thing. I think the dynamic here is going to fit in for, Williams to kind of find certain successes. And then also this cardio dynamic is going to be interesting for Bonfim. So I do like Gabriel Bonfim, but I like him by points, and that's sitting around plus 265. I think he gets the job done by points. So there you have it for UFC Vegas 102. If you want to become a client, link down in the description. We got to keep this going here. We got a lot of events coming up, and I appreciate everybody liking, subscribing, doing all those great things. And I'll see you next weekend. Let's cash.